Welcome to Early Birds Music Academy. This is the place that teaches the extra skills that make all the difference. This video is all about the Notebirds action book. The intended audience for the action book is ages 5 to 11, so children, but really it's for anybody who is wanting to demystify and understand the lines and spaces of the stave, the musical stave, and learn to read notes from it. Now, it will teach bass notes and treble notes, so low notes and high notes. This is great for anybody learning piano, but it will also give a broader spectrum of note range to any instrument, because of course we know that a violin player might well broaden out and eventually maybe pick up the double bass. So the knowledge of those low notes will be there ready for them to take up. It gives the whole spectrum, the whole musical spectrum of the pitches on the stave. So let's dive in. So I suggest you have some paper and a pen ready to jot down any questions that might come to mind. So we're going to start by having a look at the usual starting points for learning to play an instrument at whatever age. And then we're going to go on to have a little look at the value of teaching the whole picture, which helps learners make sense of their musical journey. After that, we're going to have a little look at the action book's main learning chapters to see how the Notebirds will help beginners see that full picture and begin to learn and play a greater range of notes more or less straight away. So I think it's worth pointing out that using the instrument alongside the action book is worthwhile, but entirely optional. Naming the notes placed on the stave is the main aim of the action book. So these are the wind instruments and brass instruments, and these instruments will be from one note, the easiest note that can be played on that instrument, and that note will be shown on the stave, and notes will be added one by one from there. For stringed instruments, usually the violin, they will be taught from one string without fingers on the fingerboard. Further strings will be added and further notes will be added to correspond with those strings. So here's a set of beginner books for piano students. There are lots more than these. Some of these are old, some of these are new, some of these have had updated versions published, and they all have one thing in common. They all teach from the starting point of middle C, and notes are added radiating out from that place on the keys. Now, with all of these methods, with all of the instruments that we've looked at, they'll all start with how to make a good sound in the most energy efficient way. And of course it's important, but to focus on piano playing, this is where the hands will start off around middle C. They are taught to play the keys with correct positions and technique, but you can see here that this hand position means that the hands are slightly turned outwards from the wrist to be able to place the thumbs on middle C. It's really awkward hand position, and it's fairly unlikely, to be quite honest, that further along the student's journey they'll never need to be in this position. The other problem is that if a student spends too much time with their hands here, they start to correlate that finger with that key and that note in the music, and that's very unrealistic and creates a sort of static inability to move on from that point. It becomes really hard for them to move on to read notes that extend out from that position because they have an understanding that one finger plays that one key, and that's simply not true. The Notebird system teaches from this hand position. And you can see that being shoulders width apart, it means that hands are much more naturally placed as an extension of the arm. It also means that notes from this position are being taught. It moves them quickly away from this neutral hand shape that you can see pictured here to the need to expand and contract the hand span in a comfortable way. So it becomes much easier for the student to move around the keys, reading notes from different positions. Now, if a student is new and starting the learning journey with the Notebirds, don't worry about good playing technique. Simply attack it from the viewpoint that they are learning to make sense of the stave and know which notes to play on the keyboard, even if they're just using their index finger. That's absolutely fine. Now, in the Notebirds action book, this is the starting point in learning to read music. It's a house, obviously. This is the line bird's house, and it's got 3 rooms. We call them the low, the high, and the middle room, which immediately gives the student a sense of pitch. When the stave is added, that you can see here, they start to see how the house illustrates these zones. In chapter 1 and 2 of the action book, it's based upon these landmark notes that you can see popping on here. Now, without this house, these lines become very abstract as this. Oh my word. Now, nobody can make sense of this set of lines, but this is how many lines would be needed for all the keys of the piano. So I like to look at this and remind myself that for new students trying to learn to read notes that are placed in the lines and spaces, it looks as jumbled and as chaotic and difficult to manage as this. So when I'm starting to teach notation, I do start with this with a student. The thinking behind this crazy stave is to make it harder to make it easier. When these crazy lines are stripped away to only 5, it suddenly becomes manageable. Obviously, I don't teach any music on a stave that looks like this. It's like a map of the piano keys. So this is how many lines, there's 26 I think, this is how many lines that would be needed to teach all of the keys and the notes on the piano. So it really does show the whole picture. When we talk about notes, we talk about them as being on a line or in a space like this. When they're close to each other like this, we can sort of see a correlation between them. But if that second note that bounced in was a lot higher on a space or in a line, it's really impossible to see what the gap is on the piano keys between them. We can actually make some sense of what's there. Still, though, which exact 2 keys to play on the piano is really difficult to work out. So we use these symbols and I'll talk about which of these symbols symbolises higher notes and which of these symbols means lower notes. So adding these symbols to show high and low notes, it begins to make a little bit of sense of the 2 notes that are there. What we can see is that these notes are moving in step. They're next door keys. The first one that bounced in is the lower of the 2, and they're moving in step. Also, we can see that they're somewhat sort of like amongst the middle keys, the middle group of the piano, not too far from middle C. But still, we can't really tell very easily exactly which notes to play. However, this represents the whole of the piano. Seeing this little box here makes it so much easier. We can suddenly make sense of the lines and the spaces, and the fact that there is a middle line out of the 5 lines helps a lot, and some instruments actually will start with a note on that middle line. Now, I like to remind students that we have to imagine that all of those other lines are still there, up above and down below. We just can't see them. And because piano students, quite helpfully in many ways, start with this note, middle C, they are straight away thrown into the idea that this note, being an extension of the 5 lines, has to be shown with a little bit of the line made visible. Many young children, sort of age 5 and 6, will struggle to really see the lines and the spaces here and make sense of notes that might be embedded in amongst that cluster. And especially, actually, if the lines are a little bit closer together. So most children, age 5 and 6, however, will be able to see straight away that there are 5 oranges on the table without needing to count them. But it's very difficult for them to recognise the differences between these notes placed here. They can't really distinguish the difference between these 2 pictures. Obviously, if they looked at these like this, they can see the difference. But if they were just thrown one of these at a time without the ability to compare them, they would struggle. And that's where the Notebird system really comes in to help. So you are already acquainted with the line birdhouse. A diagram of the piano will usually be present and notes will appear on the correct keys. Students can orient themselves to play those notes along with the action on the stave. Learning focuses from the low notes to the high notes because this is the order of the Notebird's names. It's like a mnemonic which can be used to help children remember which notes are which. The more they practice that, the quicker they will learn it, and very shortly they won't need to use that at all. They will just sort of like see the positions of the notes where they are embedded in the 5 lines. Now, middle C is not a starting point with the Notebirds, but the key on the piano is always there. It's just going to be there all the time, highlighted, so that students can orient to these other keys shown. Can they locate middle C on their piano? That is really important because from there, if they're wanting to use the Notebirds to learn to orient around the keyboard as well, it's important to know where middle C is. Here it is, just there. So we start to learn the further lines up from G at this point using Gertie's friends, here pictured. This is the Spacebird's house, and Gertie G is still present because her notes will help students to see the spaces between the lines. Her notes are something of a landmark, and here are the Spacebirds who will show you where their notes go. And if you have a look at Gertie's notes there, you can probably see quite logically where they're going to be. And of course, in the action book, those notes will be shown on the diagram of the keyboard as well. After this, we focus our attention on the notes represented in the middle rooms of the 2 houses. On the piano, these are the keys that are centred around middle C. So we're back to this hand position again. And actually, in correlation with other method books, this would actually be a perfect place to begin a method book for piano learning, because from here, we also start to look at the whole stave again. So the whole picture is sort of constantly revisited with Gertie's notes to start from, and we also use the same mnemonic pattern from this hand position. So it is always there, always needed. So this very old method, the one that I started with when I was 6, it's very old. And brilliantly, I think, it does start in this old method with the whole picture. And I have always found this so useful, and I don't remember when I started to read intuitively without using these patterns, but this is a system that will work for many people, many children. Who doesn't want to see the full picture to start with, to see where they're going and to get a sense of what they are learning about currently within that whole picture? To me, it makes massive sense. And I love it. It's like seeing the terrain of a map before making your next move. This is what the Notebirds method is based upon. At the end of the focus of the action book, students are awarded a final certificate, and here it is. And here's one that was given to my 5-year-old student, showing all the badges he earned from chapter 1. The platform automatically adds the names and date. The name is the username given at sign up, so if you're signing up a child for use of the action book, be sure to create an account in that learner's own full name. Now, beyond chapter 4 are lots of bonus activities to do. These will use the learning from chapters 1 to 3 to apply them to different concepts. And these things will form the first steps towards the option to take ABRSM Grade 1 theory or any equivalent. And they're all quite good fun and very colourful and fully interactive like the rest of it. Students can't progress unless they have a good understanding of what they've just covered. So to recap, we've had a look at how the Notebird Action Book can be used as a standalone learning resource or as one to support a beginner music student. We've checked out what the Notebirds add to a student's understanding of musical notation, and we've had a quick summary of the main 3 chapters of the story and how progress is rewarded. We had a brief chat about other activities that go on from chapter 4. So following this presentation, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to ask at this email address here. And please do have a look at the preview. You will have to sign up your user or yourself as a user initially to have a look at the preview. And I really recommend you do this because it will give you a good idea of how the course is structured. And it will also help you test your internet connection just to see if everything runs smoothly on it before you buy it. So have a look now, and I will hopefully see you soon. Bye.